Hey guys, what's up? I'm Chris, co-producer and drummer of the Munyks. In this video, I want to show you our approach to record a natural, vintagey drum sound that defines large parts of the 60s rock music that we all love. Well, and there's obviously not that one sound, right? Styles, method, and equipment have developed very quickly at the time. And even if you have two records of the same year, they will sound fundamentally different, right? So having learned from some of the pioneers of that era, and with what's available today, I'll show you our approach, which is fundamentally different to anything you would normally do these days. So stay tuned and check it out.
You put your magic.
Yeah, that was from our singer Nasty Love. And as we go, feel free to check out our channel, see if you rediscover anything of what we've been discussing here. Give us a like. Yeah, let's go. Where to start? Surprise, surprise. Number one, get your instrument right. So no matter what we are recording, we spend a good amount of time on the sound of the instruments and the amps to try to make it as natural, as raw, and as interesting as possible. Drum and bass are perhaps the most delicate ones because you need to get the balance of the low end, the top end, and the mids right, and how that sits later on in the mix. And I would say generally to just have a nice sounding instrument is the absolute start point. I mean, check out the kit, but it's just a nice sounding kit, right? So. As you can hear, there's no ringing, there's no shit going on. The snare is pretty crisp. The toms are amazing. I mean, that's a whole science to tune the toms, obviously. I think that cymbals integrate very nicely and just give me the sound that I want, right? So that's the absolute starting point. And then next one, obviously, it's the microphones and the positioning, including the room, okay? So I personally love getting this kind of raw sound and capturing it as well as possible. Yeah? And that's what you can hear on many of the mid to late 60s recordings. Yeah? But how can you get that? As you might know, unlike today, channels on the mixers, and especially the tape machines, were really scarce. So all the recordings of that era, including Sgt. Pepper, by the way, yeah, were done on four-track tape machines. Yeah? You did not have access to digital plugins or even analog multi-band equalizers or even compressors on every channel, if even at all. Yeah? And because of that, instruments were often recorded together and pre-mixed before they were printed on tape. That's why we still have these two layers of faders here, one for the monitoring, one for the recording. But this means you would get a lot of spill from the other instruments in the room into your channel and from the room itself. At the same time, you would not have the possibility to edit the signal during the mixdown. So you need to set up everything right before because you wouldn't have much chance to repair it later. And I was lucky enough, having met and exchanged a few thoughts with Al Schmidt, the legendary recording engineer from Capitol Records in LA, who recorded basically everybody from Frank Sinatra to Toto, yeah, you name it, yeah, and back, before he sadly died a few years ago. Yeah. He and his assistant, Steve Jenwick, recorded Uli's Drums and Percussion Festival in Paderborn. What a coincidence. But by the way, that's a great possibility to meet fellow drummers and industry icons like them, by the way. Yeah. Check that out. I think 26 is going to be the next edition. But what I found super interesting was that literally all the mics, or almost all the mics, there were a lot of 67s, were set on omnidirectional pattern. in German Kugel. So they would record a lot of the reflections from the room, which is a great sounding room in the Heinz Nixdorf Museum. But even more interesting, they said that the faders and the EQs are usually flat with what L does, meaning the sound would largely be determined by the microphone choice and its position. And there are quite a few YouTube videos where he's explaining a little bit of that. That's super interesting to see. So check that out as well. I've tried to steal a little bit from that and from others and fiddled around a lot here. Different mics, different positions. I think even this setup took a long time, several days, until I found what I like best at the moment. And you know, taste might change over time as well. But here it is, Glyn Johns method. Glyn Johns, also famous recording engineer by the time. And he made this method really famous, recording drums with 3 or 4 microphones, where there is one overhead microphone just above the snare and the rec tom, perhaps, I have it just between them, and one on the side, which captures the bottom end from the floor toms, a little bit of right as well. So why is that? There is one great advantage with this technique, and it's that it's well mono-compatible, which is important for the time. Also, as I don't know yet how we're gonna mix it down later, perhaps we want the overheads pretty close together, or even pan it, the drums hard left, hard right. And this makes it well possible. Because when you use 2 or more microphones, you would get phase issues, or you would get a wide phase image. That's because the sound that comes from here, and we have it on the snare because it's the most important drum in that style of music. You can't get it right for all drums, as you see. But the sound travels and reaches the capsule of the microphone at different times. With this method, actually, I can show you. I haven't got a measuring tape, but just use an odd cable. Put it somewhere here. There you go. Yeah, they are in exact the same distance to the snare drum. Yeah? And this makes the snare really sharp, almost like a photo. Yeah, where the snare, you can really hear it, is super, super, super crisp, super sharp. And it's really taking out unwanted phasing, loss of bottom end here. I use Neumann U67s, so they're tube mics, as they have a nice warm character and they capture the entire frequency range of the drum kit pretty well. Yeah? Remember, we don't have tom mics, so you really need to have that bottom end as well, and that's what large diaphragm microphones do well. AKG C414s also work. I feel they lack a little bit of character, but then they work for more modern music nicely, so I use them sometimes as well. These ones are on cardioid pattern, in German Niere, because I felt the omni pattern was a little bit too flat here in the room. Perhaps in a different room it would work nicer, but I tried that out, I compared it, and I prefer this setup here. I really stopped liking small diaphragm as overheads, like the KM184s. I love them, very good microphones. I use them on toms. I use them for choirs or for rooms or for almost anything. But they lack the fundament of the sonic range of the drums. So I feel they're also super flat. And remember, I don't use them as cymbal mics. I use them to capture everything, and that works better this way. There's one kind of disadvantage of large diaphragm microphones over small diaphragm microphones, because the off-axis, so the side address of the sound that then on cardioid that reaches the capsule, rolls off at the top end. Yeah? So what might look like a bug could be a feature as well, because when you mix in room or a reverb, using the Abbey Road method, meaning you roll off the top end, anyways with equalize, and the bottom end as well, you would only have the mid-range, then it doesn't get too prominent in the mix. That's what they do. Yeah? So this kind of bug actually could turn into a feature here as well. On small diaphragms, they capture more to the side. Yeah? That's the difference, and perhaps that's why they work so well on the drum kit and with this style of music. Yeah? And really don't start with the cheap stuff of some manufacturers. Please do invest in some great overhead microphones, and everything else that doesn't matter as much. But you need good overheads, period. Okay, so what's that? There is a U47 FET on the front head of the bass drum, which is also a popular choice because its large output transformer can handle the sound pressure rather well, and it generally gives you a nice and silky sound. Yeah? I had it on guitar the other day. That was super nice, and vocals not worth mentioning. Yeah, super nice mic. I like that very much as well. Admittedly, there's a Beta 52 mounted in the bass drum, but I only use that one for monitoring because then I hear the attack of the bass drum a little bit better while playing. Yeah. And lastly, there's a TLM 170 on the snare. Just if you need a bit more low end, yeah, and a bit more boom from the snare. It also captures a little bit of the hi-hat, so you don't need a hi-hat microphone anyways. I think it's set on cardioid as well, but you can try it out on the back. There's this little dialing wheel, so it's a pretty flexible microphone. I like that very much. Oh, and there's a 414 underneath on figure 8. Because the figure 8 takes out the bass from the bass drum, yeah, and it's nicely shaped, and just records the snappy snares of the snare. Yeah. Sometimes I use it in the mix, sometimes I don't, but back in the 60s, they rather recorded the bottom side of the snare than the top side to get this crisp snare sound. Yeah, but then it's the artistic choice later on in the mix, whatever you use then. Well, let's do a bit of tracking and hear what's coming out of it, huh? Let's go. Hey, so I'm here at the mixer. I prepared what we just recorded. And just to lead you through, give you a bit of an introduction, that's a Tascam M700. Actually, the last one that was built end of 80s, beginning of the 90s. I'm very proud that I kind of got hold of it and restored it a little bit. It's built after an SSL, so it looks a bit familiar if you know how an SSL looks like. And just to give you a little walkthrough, so we've got the input channels here. I'll show you on the GoPro, the 5 mics that we actually only have. Bass drum out, that's the snare, that's the bottom 414, the top, the 170, and the overheads. Right, cool. Later we can play around a little bit with the reverbs. I've got a Lexicon 480 there, PCM 70 on the snare. We're gonna add that later. And here on the inputs, obviously you've got the input channels. I use the small faders as the input channels. Then it goes to the tape machine, the digital tape machine, and then it comes back, gets routed through the EQs, through the auxes, and the large faders then determine the volume that goes to the stereo that you're gonna hear. Yeah. I've added, or I'm usually adding high-pass filters on most channels to get rid of that very low-end rumble. Even on the bass drum, what you can see here, on the snare bottom has the highest frequency there. And a little bit as well on the overheads. And then you've got the EQs, and you can see here are the highs, the frequencies, upper mids, lower mids, bass, and they're all flat, right? So on the overheads, even on the snare, on the bass drum, and here are the auxes. I've just got a little bit of reverb then on the snare and on that's the Lexicon, the 480 on the overheads. Overheads are now pan just a tiny little bit out, yeah, so maybe you can hear the difference. I'd say, well, let's take a listen and see how it turned out, right? I'm gonna record so you can hear exactly what we're doing here. There we go. That's just the overheads for now. Let's listen to the bass drum. That's what I meant, this warm, punchy, nice tone, yeah? If you combine it with the overheads, you can hear the attack is already there. It doesn't need much more attack. Let's blend that in. A bit too much. Somewhere there. Snare is next. Let's take them out. So that's the 170. And it does take a bit of the hi-hat. Cool, yeah? Don't need a hi-hat microphone. The bottom. Let's see how they work together. That's a good mix, I suppose. And let's add the other synth. Our powerful toms, huh? And I'd say that's it. I mean, you can add a little bit of compression. I've prepared my DBX 160s here for the overheads. Just a tiny little bit. Just a tiny little bit, not too much, otherwise it gets too flat. And 166, just a tiny little bit on the bass drum, tiny little bit on the snare, but I have to switch them on. So let's insert them. That's on the overheads, that's on the bass drum, and that's on the snare. Makes it a little bit cleaner, perhaps. Do I like it better without? Maybe a little bit less. Maybe a little bit. And then we can add some reverb. So I've prepared the Lexicon 480. There's a fat plate on there. Can blend it in. It's too much. And then there's a little bit on the PC M700. But listen to the toms, yeah? That's just the overheads. There's no tom mic, no nothing. I think that's pretty decent. And it's a demo that I played too. Let's add the band maybe. Here's the bass. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I mean it's a demo. It's nothing well advanced, but I think you get the idea. Yeah? So yeah, actually I'm pretty stunned by it. I think that sounds quite nice. We're gonna work on it a little bit over the Christmas period now. So stay tuned whenever the song comes out then. Super excited myself to see how it turns out. Yeah, so that's drum recording with 5 microphones without EQ, with a little bit of compression, if even a little bit of reverb. But I think you get the idea. This already makes quite a big drum sound, and it's super cool. It's super easy actually. Well, once you've found it out, but it's certainly not over-engineered, right? And it gets you the tone that the drums provide, and it gives you this nice kind of vintagey vibe. Yeah, cool. So Well, as I said, stay tuned, follow us. Then we'll announce the release of the song, hopefully soon. Check out the other videos or drop some comments if you have any questions. I hope you liked it. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned.